All right, guys, let people join. We can get started, right? So, what we will be discussing today. So, right now, guys, I just want to give you a little more depth idea about Spring Security, maybe for a couple of sessions, and then we'll be migrating to Spring Boot. Okay. But before that, we're going to be doing some more useful work, which will give you a kind of foundation and revise your foundation as well. And in today's session, I won't be going, I won't be going too much of detailing of Spring Security, but rather I'm going to be doing a few things. The things like maybe we're going to be setting up a registration form. Okay. I remember, I think you guys were asking, okay, Vilas, right now, the way you are configuring different things or different users in your application, you are basically hard coding the user in your security app config, right? Right here, you have just created some bunch of users, but users will be never be created like that in your real-time application, isn't it? Rather, you'll be having a registration form where people will come off and sign off using that registration form. And so far, we are also using the default login page of Spring Security Framework. It's giving us a default login page and we're using that. Maybe we want to replace it with our company's login form or with our customized login form, okay? And I think the kind of idea that we have right now, we learned a little bit about this component, HTTP security. We learned a little bit about form login, HTTP basic methods. With all this thing, I think we can proceed further right now with that much of knowledge, and we can set up a registration form and we can set up a custom login form. And we're going to be seeing how we can, use it with our application right now with the raw Spring application that we are having right now. And after that, I might be doing the same thing with Spring Boot as well. Okay, so now what I'm planning is I'm on my Spring MVC application right now. This one, I will be using. Let's just use some simple HTML and JSP here, and then once I migrate to Spring Boot, I'll be using Timeleaf for your front end technology, maybe from day after tomorrow. And maybe also I'm planning for a simple Angular kind of app so that you are going to be synced with all the kind of front end tech, because the concept will be same for everything. But anyhow, today we're going to be creating a registration form in this application, and we'll be using JSP as a front end view because we have to create a registration form. Maybe we can use some simple HTML and JSP little bit. You don't have to be a master of that. And I think you guys will be comfortable with this. Okay. Cool. So let's just get started with the creation of our registration form first, like the sign up form, and then we'll be going to the login form. Okay. So first of all, what I'm going to be doing, I'll be going to my source main web app, web.inf folder, and I will create a JSP page over here. Okay. Simple HTML page I'll be creating. I will go to other and look for JSP. Okay. I'll click on JSP file. And I will create this file inside a folder called view. And maybe I'll be creating something called register.jsp. Okay. A simple kind of JSP page I'll be creating right now. Okay. And let's say the title is going to be the registration form. Okay. And yeah, that's it. So maybe here in the body, let's say I'm going to be having a simple form. Okay. And now let's say the action, let's not give any action for now. Right here, let me just give a couple of things like whenever somebody will be signing off, obviously he will be giving us the username and password at least, so that signing up means creating a user in our application. Maybe we want to store the user details. So whenever he'll be logging in, he will be giving us the username and password with the same username and password he has given during the sign up, right? So we will be creating a couple of input text boxes. Okay. So type equal to text. Okay. And maybe I'm going to be saying this, get us your username. Okay. and also I'll give a break after this like this, and also I will go for a password box, right? Copy this, paste this line, and I'm going to say password like this, okay? And I'm going to say get us the password. Obviously the type I'll be changing it to password, but I'm creating a very simple HTML form, okay, right here. And I'll be giving it another break, and right here I'll be giving a submit option, okay? So I'm going to be saying input and type equal to submit, okay? And maybe the value equal to a register or something like that, okay? Control S. So we have a register.jsp page. Okay, so I want to view this page. As you guys know, for this I have to create a controller. I think here I'm creating all my controllers. Let me create a new class, and this is going to be my registration controller, something like this. All right, and inside this registration controller, obviously this is going to be a controller first of all, okay? And I will create a mapping for this, public string register, something like this, and it will return the page that I am giving over here as register.jsp. So I'm going to say register.jsp. Okay, this is the page, but .jsp I will not be concatenating. I should not be right like this. I'll be only returning the page name, something like this, all right? If you remember well. So something like this, register is my page name. I'm returning it over here. I hope there is no typo with the page name that I have over here. So let's go to the controller. Let's just make it a get mapping. Okay, and let me just create a URL. Let's say a register or something. Okay, or here the method name I'll just change it to show registration page, something like this. Show registration page. Okay. Oh, this is the method name. Rate R capital and the P capital. Okay, all good. So I have the registration page. So if we understand the normal flow, whenever I'll be invoking this URL, it will be returning this page, but this is a Spring MVC application, right? This is not a Spring Boot application. So if I'm going to be hitting this endpoint, will it return this page, or I have to do any other configuration? If you guys remember, anyone?
We have to do the configurations.
We have to configure.
What we have to configure, Digna?
View resolver.
View resolver, right? Exactly, because whenever we'll be hitting this, by default Spring, it is not a REST controller, right? So it is not going to return these things directly, as it is a normal endpoint that we have. Whenever we'll be hitting it, it is going to return us this, but by default it is going to look for a page for register. Okay, so it is not going to be a response directly returned to the HTTP response. Rather, it will be looking for this page, and obviously this page is available inside this folder. And this is the kind of page. This is not timely page, this is not HTML page, this is a .jsp extension. So the page exists inside this folder, and the extension of the page is .jsp. So let me just create a view resolver as Digna said. So I'll just go to my app config right here, and maybe in my application config I'll be creating a view resolver called internal internal resource view resolver. I'll be writing return equal to new internal resource view resolver, and I think we have a constructor which takes as prefix and a suffix. Maybe this one we can go for this, and I'm gonna say where my page exists right now. My page exists right here inside this folder, webinf view inside this. So I'm going to say /webinf /view. Okay, this is where my page exists, and all my pages will be .jsp extension, because the page I'm using, the register page that I am having over here, when the controller will return, it will be having, it should look for a register.jsp page. Okay, so I'm just configuring that .jsp over here. Okay, and obviously this is going to be a bean. I'm going to write @bean, export this. There we go. This is not needed for your Spring Boot, by the way, but yeah, view resolver I have to configure in my raw Spring application. Okay, I think I'm good. Let me just hit this endpoint and just load up this particular page. So let me just do a run on server. Click on this, next, and do a finish. Okay, Let your server boot up. What happened here? More than one fragment Spring Wave. Oh, this is the same thing we used to have, isn't it, in the last session? Okay, 1 second. This is a error I'm having. Let me do one thing. Let me just remove this guy from here. Let me just clean my Tomcat directory a little bit. Okay, and I think let me just do a clean Tomcat work directory as well. Okay, and let me just, I think I can deploy this on the server one more time. Let's just see what is going to happen. Do a finish. This time, if we are having any error, yes. What is that error? Same error, right? Spring Wave jar. Oh, 1 second, guys. Sorry about it. I think I have fixed it in the last session. In the pom.xml, what we have, the versions are 6.0.0 here, Spring version. 1 second. Let me just do map and update one more time. First update. All right. Let me just do right click, run on server one more time, please. I think I fixed it last time. 1 second, guys. Sorry about it. Absolute ordering is not needed. What the heck? 1 second. So let me just remove this. Clean Tomcat work directory. Let me just create a fresh build. Just give me a minute, guys. Let me just fix this up a little bit. Okay, build is success. Can we deploy it on the server? Yeah, so yes, this is a different error. So what is the error right now when we are deploying it on the server? Let me just go to my STS one more time. Okay, and here it is saying no bean name. There is a bean name it is looking for called MBC handler mapping interceptor, and this is not available. So it is asking me to create this bean called MBC handler mapping interceptor. I feel like, I have removed this bean in the last session. So I told you guys in my security config application, over here, the way I have done the security configuration to work with this, endpoints, I have to create a bean, this bean in my Spring MVC application because I do not want to do any extra configuration. This bean is not needed for Spring Boot. So as my framework or my application is complaining like no bean named called MBC handler mapping interceptor is available and it is asking me to define this bean, I'm simply going to create this particular bean in order to compile and run my application, because right now this endpoints are not straight away working with the request matches method over here. So let me just create this particular bean, very simple. And I'm gonna create a bean for handler mapper something. Handler, I think, what is that? Let me just cut this. Handler mapping interceptor, MBC handler mapping interceptor. This is the bean name. Return the new handler mapping interceptor, okay? And just create a bean. Okay, don't worry about it. No need to understand about this right now. I'm just creating the bean just to get started with my application. So right now, let my application start. All right, it's started. Let me just go to Google Chrome and let's just look for the register endpoint. Well, whenever I'm clicking on register, it is prompting me this particular page, right? So I'm looking for my register page and it is prompting me for that. Let me call this hi endpoint that I have in my application. If I'm going to be going over here and writing hi, it is saying hi everyone, because the hi endpoint is not protected over here, okay? But if I'm hitting any other request that I have in my application, I remember I have an endpoint called hello. This is by default protected. Bye, this is protected. And right now I have created another endpoint called register, and this is also by default protected. But if somebody wants to register, he doesn't have to log in, isn't it? So if you want to register, like obviously we do not want to protect the registration page. Okay, so if I do not want to protect the registration page and the registration URL that I have created over here, how I supposed to stop this, and how I can allow the access for the /register URL? Anyone?
If /register, we have to put the like in the app security config.
In the security config. Okay, so in the security app config, I want to give the access for this endpoint. So I have created this endpoint right now. This endpoint will return me the registration page. I do not want to protect this one, so I will go to my security app config, and here I have to do one thing like customizer dot request matcher, and I have to give my pattern. My pattern is /register. Okay, and I'm going to do permit all, something like this, right? Let's just see whether this is working. Let me just reload my server one more time. So my server is starting. Let me go to Google Chrome and let me just hit /register. Okay, still see Vijay, it is not working. So as per the rule, that should work, right? If I'm going to be hitting register, I should see my page, but still it is protected. Even I have given the access over here, permit all, still it is not allowing. Here you have to do one more thing. Okay, your concept is clear. This should have given the access. That's it, just like this. But one more thing, this registered.jsp page is inside the view folder, inside the web-inf. So whenever you have JS, like the JavaScript files or JSP files or CSS files, you are putting it inside a static folder. So make sure, like for this folder also, you give access, something like this. In the same way, I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it over here, and I'm going to say I want to give access for the web-inf folder. Inside that I have view folder. Inside that, all the JSP file that I have, I'm giving access to all the folder JSP pages for now. Okay, now let me hit the same endpoint. Let's just see whether it is working. Let me say register. I think it is not loaded. I think it's not reloaded. Let me just check. Let me go here. It's reloading right now. Let me come back over here, click on register, and boom, we got our registration page, which is good. So right now we understood. So these are the things we are permitting all, right? So which looks good. So here 3 endpoints we're permitting all, like hi endpoint and registration endpoint. And as all my pages are inside the view, so I'm also, because this is end of the day, this is also URL for Spring MVC, will access the register.jsp page like this, webinf/view/register.jsp. So I'm also treating this as a URL and giving the access for this. Let's say I'll be having my CSS file, JS file in future, inside the view folder or whatever folder I'm using, I'll be giving access to that like this. Okay, now here I have a question. I have 2 permit all things, right? Hi and register. Can I move them to one page? Is it possible? Like one line? This one and this one, can I merge them off with one line, guys? Is it possible?
I think yes.
Yes, so how can I do that? This method, right? We already have a method which takes multiple parameters inside the request matches. So if for register URL, I'm giving permit all, for hi URL, I'm giving permit all, I can move all this thing to one line, something like this. All right. And I can remove this line. Okay. Can I, this is also permit all. I can also move this line over here as well, isn't it? So I can also Control X this and put it over here and remove this, something like this, right? So do a Control S, reload your application. and I think the things will work fine. And guys, one more thing, eventually I will be also removing this customizer dot we are doing over here, customizer dot we are doing over here. I think this is also not required. I think if you can remove this one and you can remove this line, and things will work fine as well. So this is the exact same thing. So for this request matcher right now, I'm accessing all the requests, and for any other request I'm making it authenticated, right? Maybe I'll be moving this to this line. Let's just see if this one is working as well. Let me just reload my changes, and let's just see if the things are working. Everyone, make sure that you guys are on mute. So I have just connected all these things with a method chaining way, right? Let me just go over here. Let's just hit register. Register is permitted. It's working fine. Hi is also permitted. As you can see in my security config application, hi is also permitted for all. Okay, but any other requests need to be authenticated. So if I'm gonna go for hello, okay, asking for a login. If I'm gonna write let's say bye, it's asking for a login. If I'm writing hi, it is not asking for any authentication. Register is also not asking for any authentication. So this is my registration page, so which is good. So now let's just go to my registration page, and let me just keep on developing this a little bit. Well, so if you guys remember, obviously over here I'll be giving my username and password. Like somebody will come and I'll say I will register on your application. I'll give my username and password like this. The moment I'm going to do register, it will be redirected to the next page, and I should be collecting the data. And this is how we have learned. But here, whenever I'm giving the username and password and clicking on register, it is not passing those data. How to pass on those data? You guys know about it, right? I can just use something called parameter, or what is that? Name, I think. User parameter is called name. So I'm going to say user, and let's say the name equal to pass for the password, right? Do a control S. Let me just go to here. Let's say if I'll go back to the register URL. Now, if I'm going to be passing a B as username, a B as password, I'll be hiding the password. Don't worry about it. If I'm click on register right now, look at that. Now it is the user and password is over here in the URL. This is the query parameter. This is user AB is one combination, and is the connector, and pass and AB is another combination, right? So I'm collecting my data. So whenever somebody is doing register right now, I want to collect this data. So I have to do that. So whenever somebody is clicking on register, whenever filling in the data and clicking on register, now to which URL we are redirecting to the same user URL, because we have not defined any action over here. So that's why the same URL it is redirecting to, but right now I want to redirect the user to process, let's say process registration URL. Do a control S. This is the, whenever somebody will do submit, this is the URL I want them to navigate to. Let's just see whether that is working right now. Let's say I am on my register page, and I'm giving the username as AB, password as AB. Click on register, and okay. Then the process URL right now is also protected. So it is going to the process URL, I feel, but I think it is protected. So let me just do one more thing. The process registration, this URL, I think it will be going into whenever the form will be submitted. So I'll go to my security app config, and over here, one more URL. I will also make sure this need to be, this should not be restricted, and this should be also permitted by everyone. So I'm putting it over here. Okay, let's just go to the Google Chrome one more time, and I'm gonna say register, enter. I'll give a username. Let's say Anil is the let's say Anil, that is the user exists. Maybe you will be confused. Let's say Digna I'm giving over here. Digna I'm giving over here. Clicking on register. Cool. So it is navigating me to the process registration URL whenever the form is submitted, and this is the data I'm collecting, right? So now what I have to do, I have to collect this data, and I have to create an endpoint for this. Let me create the endpoint for this. Copy this guy, go to your STS, go to your registration controller, create one more endpoint. Right now, this is the get endpoint by default. We'll be making it post, don't worry about it. But right now, this register.jsp, by default the method is get, right? So don't worry about it, we'll be changing it to post later. So right now as it is a get endpoint and this is the URL, it will be submitting the data whenever the form is submitted. I will be creating the endpoint for this in my controller, and right over here I will be creating a get mapping, right? Copy the get mapping, paste it, and wrap this up and like this, okay? And right over here I have to create another method. I'll copy this method, Control C, paste it here, Control A, Control Shift F to format everything and remove this space over here. I'm gonna say process registration page, okay? I'm gonna process my registration over here, okay? And right here, this is the process registration page. Here, let's say I do not want to show them any other page, but I'm gonna say registration successful, okay? But I don't want to create a page for this, so I'll be directly write response body over here. So a page creation is not needed. It will work like a REST endpoint. So whenever this will be hit, I think the registration will be successful. Let's just see if this thing is working and we will be able to show this text when the form is submitted. I'll go to the Google Chrome, go back and register, and I'm going to be giving the details. Let's say I want to create a user called Digna, and I'm going to click on register. Cool, registration successful. Here goes the data, right? So whenever I'm coming to this page, I need to collect these details, right? And these are what we call user parameters, and these are the value for the parameters. So how can so whenever this endpoint will be getting hit, I know these are the data is coming. This is like the data are coming. Let me copy this, Control C, and come over here, and this is how the data are coming, like this, okay? Something like this. So I need to collect this data, user and pass, right over here. So this is the endpoint will be hit, and here I'll be collecting my data. So how I'll be collecting this data, this Digna and the password, this parameter data, yes? Request param. Yeah, model, well, let's say, let me just use request param directly right now. So request param, and the parameter name is user. Copy this, paste it over here, and I will just store it with user, a string variable. And another, this pass is another parameter, so I can collect it like this. Copy this thing one more time, paste it, and now I'll be changing the password I'll be collecting, and the data I'll be binding it to any other variable. I can just give any variable, or you can also make it pass. Okay, so I'm collecting my username and pass over here. I think you can see it, right? Look at that. The username I'm collecting, I think this data will be faced and will be binded to this, and also the pass data I'm asking. So this data will be faced like Digna is the password and will be binded to this. Okay, so I'm gonna, let's just see if I'm able to get the data. Let's say registration successful for the user, okay, and plus, and I'm gonna say I'm gonna just print the user over here, okay, this data. Let's just see if I'm able to get a hold to the data, and let it reload the changes. And once it is done, I will go to /register, enter. Let's say Digna do register, okay, registration successful for user Digna. I think this is working fine. So you can see I'm just giving some detail, clicking on register, and it is saying registration successful. Cool. Our holo is ready. Our prototype is ready. Now we have to create the user for the same. Okay, so we are getting the user, we are getting the password, and things are working. Well, so how can we basically, so we are getting the user information over here, right? So now we have to store the user information to our database, okay? Or right now we can store the user we are collecting the user information. Now we want to store them to the database, or maybe we want to store them to, let's say, to a in-memory or to a file system or to somewhere. So first of all, if I'm able to collect the user over here to to store the user, what I need, like as per your understanding so far, anyone, if I want to store a user in the database or to a file system or to anywhere, what I need, what should be the process, whatever understanding you have so far? Yes, anyone, if you want to go ahead. Guys, requirement is clear. I am collecting the data from the like user is giving me the data, right? I'm collecting the data over here. With this data, I want to create a user and I want to store it to the database or to a file system or to in memory. What should be done over here?
First of all, you want to establish connection between database and your application.
Yes. Let's say I'm not going, okay, I'll be needing the connection to my database and I'll be storing my user over here. But how to create the user in Spring Security? Anyone?
By using user details.
By using user details. User details is a class or
interface.
user
User
details.
is the implementation.
User details is the interface. User is the implementation. So I'm writing user. So so user, the correct one I'm using, right? Yes. Then I'm gonna do what with user name. Okay. So username. This is the user. Copy that. Paste it over here. Okay. Then with like I think password. I'm writing password over here. Collect the password over here and put it over here. Okay. Good. Then
create user.
Whenever you are creating the user in Spring Security, yeah, role. Three things I told you, right? Username, password, and the role. Well, the role I'm going to be hard coding, because whenever somebody is going to create a user in an application, you are not going to tell them, okay, who are you? Give us your role. Okay, you will not be asking the user to enter the role, isn't it? Rather, you're going to be defining the role by yourself. Otherwise, everyone will be admin, because if I'll tell you, okay, create one user on my application, you will go and create a user as an admin and you can do whatever you want, right? So, that won't be the case. Right over here, you should be giving one role. Let's say I'm giving one role like user over here. Okay. And there you go. Okay. This is how you have to create a user. And obviously to create a user, you have to do a build. And whenever you're going to be doing a build, do a control1, assign statement to a new local variable. Here, obviously you're going to be getting the details of the user. And let's say this is the user that you have created. Let's say app user. Okay. So there you go. Pretty simple. You have applied the same concept over here and created the user. Okay. So now once the user is created over here, how you can store the user? Let's say if I want to store the user to the memory of the server, then what thing I'll be using here? Anyone? Now the user is created. I want to store it. Yes. In memory. What?
User details manager.
Okay. I'll be using a service class, which is by default available, and that is called, let's say in memory, I want to store my data. I'm going to be writing in memory user details manager. Okay, and I will be doing in memory user details manager. Okay, and this is going to be a bean. I think this bean I have already created in my security config file. If you remember, right here, setup users, I have created a bean. Now this thing you can simply remove. We are not going to hard code the user like this. Rather, we're going to be making it dynamic, right? It's like whenever the application is setting up, we have two users, right? We're creating this bean, but don't worry about it right now. We already have created the bean. We're going to be taking that particular bean over here and writing it AutoWare. Okay. And you can just use this guy over here, in memory user details manager. And to create a user, what method I'll be using? Create user. And already you have the user created. Copy this, paste it over here, and there you go. You are done. You are done. You guys know everything, right? So yeah, cool. One change I want to do, guys, this is not the best practice, like, writing it AutoWord over here. Rather, the best practice always will be create a constructor, right? So click on source. Sorry, let me just do it manually. Control space, create a constructor like this. And I take this object over here in the parameter, because whenever Spring will create the object for registration controller, because it has a controller annotation, when the bean for this will be created, obviously it will create the object for this particular class using this constructor. And here only I'll be setting this. One second. I'm going to say this dot in memory user details manager is equal to in-memory user details manager. Okay, so the auto varying I'm doing, but in this way, I'll be doing a constructor injection, not a field injection. You can write auto var over here, but in case you are not writing the auto var also, that's fine, because there is only one constructor available. Spring will create the controller class object. Whenever it will be creating, it will be using the constructor class object to create the object for this. And whenever it is going to see, well, there is one parameter available, then this is the dependency. It will automatically inject the dependency. And obviously we have created the bean for this over here. So this object we have created, this object will be available in the container. That object will be injected over here and over here. So obviously we're going to be getting the object over here. So we do not have to create the object like this right now, right? In memory user details manager, we don't have to create the object manually by us. The dependency will be injected, and obviously this object we are getting, and we are just using that object and calling the create user method on top of this. Okay, let's just do a control S. Let's just see if everything is working and if my application boots up. Oh, there is some error. What is that? What is that? Error creating the no, auto wait is not needed. So
Bean which have declared different. In-memory user details manager bean name declared in
config.
This one
Yes.
config.
Yes, this bean is created. Already we have the bean, right? Already we have the bean. So
We set the users.
Bean name you have given setup users here.
that's fine. You can give anything over here. That's not a problem. Control V, write it I, Control S, reload everything in the server. Okay, we still have that error. Let's just see what is the error is saying. Error creating the bean name registration controller. So registration controller bean, the controller that we are working on, is not created. Why is that? Okay, no error create. Okay, error creating the bean name registration controller. And what is the region? Region is unsatisfied dependency expressed through the parameter 0. Okay, security app error creating the bean name for security app config. Okay, okay, 1 second. What is that? Oh, there is a circular dependency problem over here. Okay, we don't have to give a damn about it. Otherwise you guys will be like, I don't want to explain this concept right now. So basically what is happening, guys, see, error creating the bean name in-memory user details manager. You guys told me to change the name of the in-memory user details manager over here, the bean name, right? So it is not able to create that bean because there is a circular dependency problem. And you can actually move that particular bean to a different class. But for now, the way I'll be solving that issue, I don't want to mess up with that right now. I will be just, because you guys know, here it will be automatically auto-word. Something like this, auto-word, something like this, right? You guys know whenever this particular class object will be created, this constructor will be used, and obviously this dependency will be auto-word because the object is already available. Well, I think when the bean is getting created for my this particular controller, that time that bean is not created. So there was a circular dependency problem. I'll be just fixing it for now by using @lazy annotation over here. So either you can put @lazy over here, or you can just cut it and put it over here, something like this, and remove the constructor, something like this. Okay, just make sure, just write the @lazy, because to avoid that circular dependency issue, we don't have any code issue. That this some design issues there. We'll be fixing it. We'll be improvising our code, right? But for now, I'll be using my constructor injection only. And for one constructor, we do not need @auto-word, not needed. Spring will by default inject the dependency over here. So there is no code changes. I'm just using @lazy because one unexpected exception I'm getting, the circular dependency injection exception. I'll be telling you why you are getting that, but don't worry about it right now. Let's focus on the topic. Everything has been set up, and the application is bootstrapping. Okay, let's just try to utilize our application right now. Let me go to the register. I'm able to access it. Let me go with a user called Rakesh. Let me do register. I think the user with Rakesh is registered right now. And if I'll go to my STS, let's just see if I have any error here. I think there is no error. This is the call stack, not the error. So we don't have any error here. So I think we have a user created called Rakesh, right? Let me go over here right now and let me go for the endpoint hello. Hello is by default secured. Now let me log in with Rakesh. Okay, do a sign in. Well, it's saying bad credential. Why is that? Anyone? Look at that. What mistake I'm doing? Think about it. Think about it. This is your process registration, endpoint. Whenever you are doing register with any user, you know this is going to go to the in memory. Let's say username password is Abhilash. Whenever I'm clicking on register, the registration is happening. You're creating the user in the memory, but maybe there is something is fishy over here. Look at that. This is how you're creating the user. Create user method, and here you are basically creating the user over here and saving it to the memory by using the create user method over here. So what can be wrong?
Is it because of password?
Exactly. It's because of the password. Like here I'm giving the password. How I'm giving the password? I'm giving the password in plain text, right? How I'm storing the password? Have I seen the logic for that? Let's just see how I'm storing the password. Come over here.
You have to declare bean.
I have to declare the bean. I think I already have the bean, but look at that. What password I'm using? Vijay? Bcrypt password encoder. How the Bcrypt password encoder looks like? Something like this, isn't it? Something like this.
That one and then put.
Exactly. This is the same question if I remember Digna asked maybe in the day 2 or day 3. Let's say Bcrypt password encoder. I'll go to a Bcrypt calculator site. And in this site, let's say if I'm giving Rakesh over here, so whenever user is hitting Rakesh, I should store his password something like this in my database or in my file system. 1 second. Okay, I should be storing storing his password something like this. Okay, but now I have to do it dynamically, and for that, what I can do, I already have a password encoder bean over here created, right? So I can use the password encoder. I can go to the registration controller right now. Okay. And here, first of all, I will, to encode my password, I'll create a password encoder object over here, something like this. Okay. And you guys know in the password encoder interface, we have something called encode method. The encode method is going to help us to encode a password. Okay. Based on the underlying technology that we are using. Here, the underlying implementation that we are using is a Bcrypt password encoder. Also, obviously, it should have the encode method. If I look for the encode method, it has the encode method, and this method is going to take the raw password and it is going to help me to encode it, encode it accordingly, right? Encode it accordingly to the underlying encoding logic that I'm using. So in my registration controller, I'm creating the password encoder, and right here in my process registration method, what I'll be doing, I will be calling the encode method, right? Encode method, something like this. And here I have to give the password. Okay, where is my password? My password I'm collecting over here, right? Copy this and paste it over here. Pass your password over here into the encode method. Do a control-1, assign the statement to a local variable, and this is the encoded password, right? This is the Bcrypt encoded password. Copy this and put the password over here. Instead of the raw password, give the encoded password, right? Now, one more thing you have to do. The password encoder you have to auto-word. So you can either write auto-word over here. Otherwise, I told you best practice, put the password encoder inside the constructor parameter so that you don't have to explicitly write password like auto-word for this. So just put it over here inside the constructor and just set it this dot password encoder is equal to password encoder. Just create the constructor for the same. Maybe you can use your IDE, and that's it. So the password encoder bean will also be injected through my constructor because this is the only constructor that I have. I don't have to put the auto word over here. Do a control S. Let's just restart my server and let's just see. So I'm gonna be restarting everything, and I will go to my Google Chrome and go to my registration form, do an enter. Let me create a new user called Vijay. Do a register. Well, Vijay is registered right now. Let me just try to access the /hello endpoint. This is protected. Now can I use Vijay over here? Vijay, enter, and boom, we are logged in, right? So everything is working like a charm so far. So we have written the logic for the registration to doing a simple registration for a user, and everything is working fine. And just like we're creating the user, we can also delete the user, update his credential. We can do a whole variety of things right now, isn't it? So things are looking good, and I think everything is looking good. Now I just want to follow some best practices over here. I think our logic is fine, everything is working, but the good thing that I want to do over, yes, question.
Yeah. So while creating a registration, means while registering any user,
Uh-huh.
you are putting the password and saving it in the DB, right?
Yes,
But
yes.
while logging, we
Huh.
are not recording it. So how that is happening?
That is happening through the internal methods that the Spring people has written. So that's what I'm saying. While login, Sunil. So basically, one second. Let me just minimize it a little bit. Yeah. So while login, so what will happen? Whenever you are logging in, your data will be loaded, right? So have we written any internal logic to load our data? So basically, I've created Vijay user, and now when let's say right now. Let's say I'm doing a logout. Okay, this is the default login page. Okay, whenever I'm giving Vijay and Vijay, right? So whenever I'm doing this and whenever I'm doing a sign in, obviously this data should be loaded, right? This data is getting loaded from where? Now where I'm storing my data? In the memory, in memory, right? In the in memory I'm storing the data. Well, I told you guys, Control-Shift-T, go to the in-memory user details manager. This is the class that I'm using, in-memory user details manager. Where is that? This one. Okay. So here I told you I have a method called create user method. Okay. Not create user details, Control O, create user method. Okay. This is the method I'm using right now. And internally this method is taking the user details that you are giving in your controller right here. You have created an user, giving it inside the create user method, and if I'm going to click on control click, it will go to the same method of the in-memory user details manager, as you guys can see, and it is taking the user and storing it. Where it is storing it? I told you guys it is going to store it in a map, because we are storing it. This is the in-memory user details manager, right? It is going to store the data inside the memory only. So this put method it is using to take the user, and it is creating some mutable user over here, because these user details can be modified. Like if somebody wants to change his username or password or something, well, we don't have to care about it right now, but we are putting this user over here. One second, sorry. We are putting this user over here inside this user, and this is a map, right? This is a hash map. Well, so we are going to store our users over here. Like that, whenever we're going to be loading the user, we should have a load method over here, right? If I'm going to click on load user by username, if I'm going to click on this, this is the method which is going to be used internally by the framework to load the user. For an example, if I'm going to put a debug point over here, right? And if I'm going to stop my application, okay? And if I'm going to be starting my application right now in debug mode, so I'll be starting my application in debug mode. So you'll be seeing to load the user, this method will be used, load user by username. And whenever the user will be loaded, whenever somebody will be trying to sign off, well, I have right now restarted my server. So the Vijay user will be removed from the server. So I have to create it one more time, because I'm using an in-memory user details manager. So I will go to my application, and first let me just go on a register form, and I'll be creating Vijay and Vijay, and I click on register. So Vijay user is right now created. Now let me just do one thing. I'm going to be login, right? Whenever I'll be login, so I will be giving Vijay over here and Vijay over here. Now, whenever I'm signing in, internally the framework is going to look for this user. But how it will be getting the user? What strategy I have used to store the user over here? In my registration controller, what strategy I'm using to store the user? The strategy is in-memory user details manager. I'm storing the user in memory, right? So this is my implementation class that Spring people has provided for me. And here I have the load user by username method. Let's just see whether it is getting called or not. I'll be coming over here, click on sign in. Look at that, my debug point triggered. If I'm going to click on switch, so see, I'm inside that particular method, and now this is the username I'm giving called Vijay. It is going to load the data. It is converting it to lowercase right over here and searching for this in the same map that you have stored. If you're going to click on the users, this is the same map where you have stored the user whenever you have created the user, right? Now you can see you have all these 3 users, right? One user you have created called Akhil, one user you have created called Anil over here inside the security config. Akhil and Anil user you have created, and right now one user you have created dynamically, right? That also should be over here. If I'm going to be hover on this, third user is Vijay. This user he has created. Vijay is the key and mutable user. This mutable user, inside this they have stored the password. There's password and whether his account is activated, all the user related details inside this one. So if you're going to be going inside this, so value is mutable user, and you can see this is the password of the user, and this is what we have encrypted, and the other details might be stored over here, like whether is like the user details, right? The account, whether it is expired, what is his roles. So he has only one role called user, whether his credential is expired, whether the user is enabled, and all the different strategy. Now if I'll come to my method called load user by username, right now this method is getting called first, and now it is going to look for that particular username called user, whether it is exists in the database or right now in our case in memory. Now if the user is null, it is going to throw an exception. That will be eventually will be throwing us a bad credential. If not, in our case this user is not null, so it is creating a new user and it's going to get us logged in. And once it's create a new user and get us this detail, like the username is Vijay, the password is whatever we have given, and by default all this user is enabled, and all this data is by default set as I have already told you guys, and this user will be returned, and internally the framework will be using this detail. So if I'm going to be doing a resume, you will be seeing in your Google Chrome you are logged in right now, and you can use hello resource, right? So the way whenever you are using right now, you are taking care of that registration process over here using this create user method, right? Whenever you are creating user, you can do a same debugging. You can put a debug point over here and see the framework will take your user and will put that user inside this map, right? So like that, whenever you are signing in, internally it is loading up the user. That thing I have not done that yet. I have not written that particular thing, that logic by myself. I will be telling you how to write it, but for now this is the method the framework is using, and this is from the same class called in-memory user details manager. And I have told you guys the in-memory user details manager implementing the user details interface, which is like a service class, which is giving you all the feature of creating a user, updating a user, deleting a user, changing the password, blah 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 things. But this class object we are creating, and we do not want to create an implementation class for this. That's why we have used the in-memory user details manager class, which overrides all the other thing, like which overrides the create user, delete user, and all this method, and given it a implementation, right? But like that, if you're gonna go to the user details class, one more time, user detail in-memory user details manager implements the user details manager, and also it's extend to the user details service. So right now the user details service has one method over here called load user by username, which will help you to load the user by the username when somebody is trying to sign in. And this is the method which will be eventually overridden by the in-memory user details manager, okay? Because it implements user details manager, that implements user details service, which has that method. So this method, if you're gonna go back, is also be overridden by the in-memory user details manager. That's called load user by username. They have already given us this logic, which is getting used whenever we are trying to do the sign in. Okay, little bit of information, but I hope this is making a little bit of sense right now. Sunil? Yeah, but eventually, Sunil, we will be writing our own logic. Like whenever somebody will be signing in, that load user by username method, we will be overriding, we will be giving the details and the implementation over there. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, I think, yeah, this is good. Well, guys, before you guys go today, let's just improve this particular things a little bit. So see, right now, I think everything is working good, but there is a problem, right? Whenever you are basically going to register, okay? Now here you will be giving some details, clicking on register. You are seeing the data over here in the URL, okay? So this is not a good thing. Why the data is visible over here, guys? Whenever I'm submitting, why the data is visible over here? What, Digna?
Because of that.
You are using
I didn't get it. Can you just come again?
get map. You are
Get
using.
mapping. Yes, get mapping. So let's just see our register the JSP. We're using the get. We should not use the get. We should use the post because somebody is giving the username and password and we do not want to prompt the user details in the URL. So whenever we will be giving some data, doing a register, the data should be hidden from here, right? Now it is giving us a 403 forbidden because obviously, this endpoint right now is a post endpoint and we do not have a respective handler method available because right now we have changed the information right here. Now this is going to be a post method. Whenever the form will be submitted, this is the endpoint which will be got hit and this is a post method. So what I'll be doing, I'll go to my controller, I'll be changing this process registration to post, okay? But I'll be doing it eventually, don't worry about it. I think if I'm gonna be doing it right now, there will be an issue, but let me just check it once. Okay, can I go to app config? One second, can I go to my register.jsp? It is a post method and let me go to my controller and here, let me just make a post mapping right now. Anyhow, this endpoint is not secured, right? This endpoint is not secured. We have already added this endpoint over here. Process registration is not secured. I think it will not cause any problem. Let me just do Control S. Let me just restart my server and let's just see if everything is working fine. We have changed our process registration URL to post. So if I'll go back, okay, let's say
request param would not be extracted, right?
Yeah, let's just see. It's just giving us forbidden right now. Yeah, request parameter, we do not have it inside the
we don't have it in the request parameter.
In the request parameter, correct. But I think that should not be a problem. We are just hiding it. I think this is causing because of a different problem. Let me just check a little bit of thing, guys. Let me just see whether this is fixing the thing. Okay, because I'm not sure the way the security is behaving in our latest version right now. So I'm just writing this endpoint, like writing that particular method. Let me go back and let me just create a user, AA, password is AA, do a register. Yeah, it's just happening fine, right? User is registered, the AA user. So what I have done, guys, I will be coming back to this and will be explaining you for a particular lesson. See guys, in your application right now, whatever the post endpoint that you have right now, so far in our application, all the controllers that you're going to be seeing right here, previously this used to be a get endpoint. This used this is a get endpoint. Hi controller, previously whatever the URLs that we have created, all are get mapping, by controller, get mapping. For get mapping, there is no extra protection by Spring Security has not been given, okay? Because get mappings are basically which is going to solve the thing that you have in the server. Let's say you are asking for the data. Let's say class by is giving you this data, right? This is like it is solving the data for you, like some information you are asking, like, okay, get me my account balance, right? Get me the number of people available inside that particular company. Just data you are asking. You are not going to alter any data. But whenever the alteration thing will come, like the data manipulation, you will be using the post mapping, delete mapping, put mapping, right? For all the update operation, manipulation of data, whenever you're trying to do, Spring Security has one more extra layer on top of that for protection. And that's what we called CSRF. And by default, that is enabled. So that will not bug you whenever you are going to write any get mapping kind of a thing. But whenever you're going to be writing any post method, that thing will cause you the issue. And right here in our security config, previously my CSRF was enabled. Now I have just disabled it. That's why right now it is working fine. CSRF stands for cross-site request forgery. What is that? We will be understanding it in detail. But let's say if you're working with any post endpoint, right? It's not like with only this one. Any post endpoint if you're going to be creating. For an example, I'll go to a random high controller. Let me just create a endpoint called public string. Let's say add something, maybe add data. Okay. And let's say this is a post endpoint. So return, let's say data added, something data added. Let's say here you are doing some DB insertion. Okay. You are inserting some data to the DB, and this is a post endpoint, let's say post mapping, and let's say / add data. Okay, let's say you have a endpoint like this, which is a post mapping endpoint. Now this simple endpoint also will not work. You're gonna see, you just do one thing, go to your app config and remove the CSRF like this, and like right now we have a post endpoint over here, right here. So let's say you are creating in the security app config, by default the post endpoint will be secured, isn't it? See right now, hi register, and this endpoint is by default permitted by all the other requests that we have, all the other resources that we have is authenticated, right? Now this endpoint that we have created called add data, which is the post endpoint, this is also protected by default, right? Let's just save everything. Okay, let's just save everything. Let the server restart with all the latest changes that we have. Now if you want to hit any post endpoint, you're going to be saying right now, let me just see, hi is not protected, right? Hi is not protected because it is permitted by all, if you remember well. Okay, and all this requested are also permitted by all. Let me hit the new request that we have created called add data. Okay, now if I'll go over here and I'm going to hit add data, by default it should be also be authenticated. Okay, so it is prompting me the login form, which is good because of this line that we have written, that any other requests are authenticated. Now let's just authenticate. Let's just use one of the default user that I have created called Akhil. Okay, now I'll go to Google Chrome and I'll log in called Akhil, and Akhil do a sign in. Okay, and well, it is trying to load the user and I'm already in debug mode, so that's why it is asking me to switch, because Sunil asked me that question, right? Here I put a debug point for load user by username. I do not want to debug. Let me just skip all the debug point. Let me click on resume. Well, now you can see if I will go to my Google Chrome, okay, this is giving 405 method not allowed, because by default this is treating it as a get request because I'm hitting for my from my browser, and that's why 405 method not allowed is coming, and we are also getting request get is not supported, because obviously that's correct. I'm just doing some dumb thing because obviously this is a post request. Let me copy this. Let me go to my postman. So I'll go to my postman right here. Okay, and I'll hit a post request. One second. All right, I'll be hitting a post request right now. Let me go over here, hit this one. This will be a post request. This will be needing the authentication. I'll be doing a basic authentication. So I'll go to basic auth and I'll be giving, let's say Anil user is there. I'm going to be making it Akhil for now with the same example. Akhil user is there. Now I'll be hitting the endpoint with a post request. Let's just see what is going to happen. Do a send. See, it is authenticating me, but it is giving me a forbidden thing, because by default all the post endpoints are protected. But if you're going to write any other protected endpoint, let's say hello is also protected, right? If I'm going to write hello with giving the username and password, I'll be able to access them, I feel. Oh well, hello is a get request. Okay, do a send. See, I'm getting hello everyone, but the previous one, this one is a post request. Even though you are going to give the right credential, you will not be able to log in. It is giving you forbidden. Okay, so that means if you're going to go to the preview, it is saying the server understood the request but refuses to authorize it because we have some other protection also activated, which is the CSRF protection. Okay, to turn that CSRF protection off, you have to do this thing. You have to go to the security config, okay, and you have to disable the CSRF like this. Okay, then all your post endpoints will be after authentication, they will be working. This is an extra level of protection. Why this protection has been given, I'll be giving you an example maybe in the future lessons. Okay, so if I'll be coming back to the Postman again, and if I'm going to click on the data by giving all the username, password, do a send right now, and see I'm able to access that endpoint. And for the same reason, whenever I'm posting my data over here with my registration.jsp, this is a post endpoint. This is a post endpoint. That's why whenever I have changed that endpoint to over here, where is that? Let me close all this thing. High controller, close it. By controller, close it. This guy also close it. Registration controller. Okay. Now the process registration is a post mapping. That's why I have turned off the CSRF like this. Okay. Hope this makes sense. But right now, some more modification we can do. Okay. We can, it's already time off, but can we just sit for another 5 or 10 minutes, guys? Is it fine? Can we continue for 10 more minutes so that I can complete this guy? Yeah, thanks, Digna. Guys, no problem, right? Can we continue for 10 more minutes? Can you just confirm me once?
Yes, I will.
Okay, all right, okay. Cool. Okay. Only 10 minutes, guys. Okay. Just see. Now just improve it a little bit because anyhow we'll be completing this one. So see, now in my registration controller, everything is working. But let's say I'm going to give you a simple task to do. Let's say, guys, the task is whenever the registration page is popping up, right? Whenever we're hitting this endpoint, let's say /register we are hitting. Okay. And this page is popping up. Whenever this page is popping up, let's say I'm giving some default name here. Username Avilas, password Avilas. That data should be populating over here. Then how can I send data? Let's say whenever this page is popping off using this URL I have created over here. Okay, this URL I have created over here. Let's say I have a couple of string. Okay, let's say I'll be creating a couple of string. Maybe I'll create a DTO over here. Let's say I want to transfer some data from my controller to view. Let's say I'll be creating a DTO inside the package, and let's say this is something called registration DTO. Okay, and imagine inside this right now I'm just having a couple of fields. Let's say private string username, okay, and private string password, okay, for an example. And I'm creating the getter and setter for the same. Create getter and setter for this. Control-1, create getter and setter for this. Okay. Now let's say, let me stop my server as well so that it will not reload again and again. Now, if I'll go to my registration controller over here, let's say I have an object. Okay. I have an object like registration DTO. Registration DTO is equal to new registration DTO. Okay. Now let's say I want to set some default username and password. For an example, let's say the default username is let's say Digna, okay, and registration DTO dot set password. The password is, let's say Digna, right? Something like this. This is the default username and password that I have, and I want to send this default username and password to this registration form. Control-Shift-R to open that form, and I want to populate those data inside this username and password field, so that whenever I'll be whenever this page will be loaded, it will read the data from username and it will place it inside the username text box. It will read the password from this password field from this object, and it will place the object inside the password text box. How can I achieve it? Anyone? You understand my question, right? I have to put Digna and Digna over here. So how to achieve it? Anyone? model attribute, right? So I have to send a model I have to send this object to the view, right? So I have to create a model. Let's say model, and let me just import it, and I'll be using a model attribute. So model dot add all attribute, or maybe add attribute right here, key value pair, and let's say some random name you can give, let's say registration, and let's say this DTO I want to transfer. By default, the data will be available inside this object will be available inside the register JSP page. Now you have to fetch the data from that object, and we have to populate the data inside each text box. For that, what you have to do, anyone, if you remember?
Model attribute we have to here also.
Yeah,
and
here also we have to use the model attribute. Cool. So let me use the model attribute, but I am not getting that particular thing. Why, Digna?
J.
You have to import it.
R.
It's a normal form. This is a normal HTML form, right?
JSP form.
JSP form we need for so remember, maybe after 2 days in Spring Boot we'll be using Timeleaf, right? So for the data binding feature, we will be needing the form tag, right? So go to the Google Chrome and just look for Spring MVC form tag. Okay, go to any of this site and copy this form tag, right? This is the URL that you have to refer to, and this is the prefix called form. So don't worry about it. Come over here and paste it right here, something like this. So now you are pointing to the Spring MVC form tag wherever it is, and this is the prefix. Now using this prefix to this HTML form that you have created here, and you have wrapped up everything over here, instead of the HTML form, using the Spring MVC form, like you use the form over here, copy this and paste it over here, something like this, right? So this is my Spring MVC form. Now we can use the model attribute. Now give the attribute name. So whatever the model attribute that you have created in your controller, right? This is the model attribute that you have created. It carries this object has this value, username value Digna, password value Digna. So come over to the register.jsp, give that model attribute name, copy this, then you have to do what? You have to change the name to path, right? You have to give the path. So I'm removing the name anyhow, by the way. For Spring MVC form, the name is not required. Let's say otherwise you can also have the name, not a problem. Here just have one more thing called path, right? Can I have the path here? Path is not coming because this is a normal input. You have to use form : input, right? Form is the prefix. Form is the prefix for the form tag that you have added over here. So use the form here, form : input, and end it over here, right? And just use the path right now. You will be getting this path, and give the path name. For this registration, this raise, you are getting from where? You are getting from here. This is what? This is the registration DTO. Inside the registration DTO, this is the field which is carrying the username data. Copy that and go to the register.jsp and paste that in the path, right? Same for the password as well. Convert it to a Spring MVC form tag, form.input, and give another thing called path for the data binding. So it is going to fetch the data from this object, and this is my registration DTO object. Whatever the data I have inside the password field, fetch it and show it. Okay, show it here. Put it so that box will be showing the data, and end it off right over here. Okay, I think we are good. So let's just do a Control S. Let's just restart our server. Let's just see if we are able to get the data over there. So if I'll go to my Google Chrome, if I'll go to my registration form, click on register. Oh well, there's something happened. What is that? Jasper exception, stack trace, target name raise available. Target name raise is not available in the request. Why
I think @ page enable tag that.
Yeah, I think we do not need that. I think more rage is not available. It is not saved, because this is the data I'm transferring. This raise, we are transferring it to our view, right? From the controller, we are creating the registration DTO object, setting all the data and this object we are transferring to this view with the name of raise, and this from the raise only, from the JSP we are fetching the data. We are putting raise over here and fetching the data using path, fetching the data using password, and you are trying to extract those data, right? But it is not happening because it is not finding this range. So you have to save this particular page. So let's just restart, and I think I just want to see those data. Let me just do another enter here, and yeah, there you go. So you got the data over here, Digna and Digna. Over here you are able to populate the data, but this is just for your understanding. That's why I just to recap, I told you to set data. You do not need to set data over here. You would just create the object and send it to your registration page over here. So now now let's just restart it one more time. Let the server restart. Okay, now the data should be gone because I have removed the username and password data that I have set over here. So it should be null and null. So let me just enter. Yeah, so username and password is not available over here. So whenever somebody is doing a register, now I just want to capture those data, right? So right now, whenever somebody will do a register, what will happen? So obviously, if I'll go to the back end of this particular page, this page is this one. Over here, whenever I'll be going to this endpoint, I want to capture this data, username and password. I want to extract the data from the path, right? Previously, I was extracting from the username and password. So right now, I'll go to the process registration endpoint. So I'll go to my controller. My process registration endpoint is over here. Now, instead, like, I will be collecting the data like this, username and password. What I will do, I will directly collect it. I will just create the object over here, registration DTO object. So I'll just do registration DTO and registration DTO over here. So the object will be created. This object will be created by Spring. If you are putting your DTO object inside the parameter, then the object will be created by Spring only. So Spring will be creating the object, and also it will fetch whatever the information you are giving in the form. Let's say you are giving some data here and you are doing register. The path that you are setting over here, from that path only the data will be automatically fetched and will be injected to the variables that we have over here. You guys know about this. And then once that is possible, you can just get everything from here. Registration DTO.get password you can do. So I have reduced the number of lines of code, and here you need the user. You can just do registration DTO.get user name right here. And if you want to print the user, you can just do registration DTO.get user to print the username, right? That's it. That's good. And in the register.jsp, if you want to remove the name also, you can remove the name, but if you want to keep it, that's also fine. Now I think we are done with this. Let's just see if everything works fine. Okay, and let's just see if we are able to collect the data over here in the registration form. Well, I have not saved it. I just want to see whether this object is getting created, and once the form is submitted, if I am able to get my inserted data in the form, if I'm able to collect them over here inside my process registration form. Okay, so this is the last thing. Let me just wait till the server restarts. Okay, it's restarted. Okay, enter, just give the data. Let's say I'm giving Bhagya, and do a register. Well, now I'm able to collect the data I fill because I'm printing the details over here. Bhagya, you can see it is already populating, and I think the data is getting binded, and password and everything I'm collecting from the registration DTO. Let's just see whether everything is working fine or not. So I'll be going to, let's say, what is that? Let's say hello endpoint. This is protected. Let me just give Bhagya and Bhagya here, do a enter, and I'm logged in. So good. So I have optimized the code. So this is the code we can go with. And over here also, this couple of line you don't have to write. As I've told, like, you don't have to create the object like this. Just create the object like this. Okay. No need to create the object like this because Spring will create the object for you. And you don't have to create a model, and you don't have to send the data by using add attribute. Rather, you just write @model attribute over here. This will do the same thing. Okay. Do a Control S. This also should work as well. We'll just do a testing and we'll wrap up for today. Okay. So everything is good. It's started. Let me go to register one more time. Okay. Oh, it's not available. Okay. Model name is Rage. So because yes, correct. So basically I have missed it because right now in the page it is the model attribute that it is expecting is raise. This raise means the registration DTO object. The registration DTO object where we have created, here we have created, right? And by default the name will be same as this one, but we want to change the name. The name I'll be giving is Rage. Now imagine the registration DTO object has been created and the data obviously has not been set, is both null and null. The set username, set password, both are not set over here, and it will go to the view with the model attribute name called Rage. So over here we are basically, sorry, control Z, it's correct only. So with this, I think we can restart our server. I think we have done all the setup. I think right now the Rage will be available. The Rage we are creating over here. If I'll do a Control Shift R, go over, sorry. If I'll do a if I'll go to this page right here, okay, here the Rage will be available, I feel. Okay, let's just see, register, available. Let's say I'm gonna write a B, register is like successful. Go to the hello endpoint, okay, write a B over here, logged in. Okay, cool. Any other questions you have from this? This is simple Spring MVC thing. I think you should be okay with it. But yeah, just let me know if you have any questions.
Can you go to security app config?
Security app config, yes.
Is there any, if we are having many endpoints, which is permit all, can we reduce, means with one more slash we can reduce, means all the request coming with the allowed slash high, allowed slash register?
Yes. Patron you are saying, right, Digna?
Yes.
Let's say for employee you have many patrons and you want to make it protected. Just do star. It will work. Okay. Let's say you have get request, post request, same for the same endpoint, or let's say /employee/home /employee/menu /employee/ some other thing. Just do /star. That will work for everything. Okay.
Then that WebINF use star is there. No, there will be allowed pages and restricted pages will be there.
Exactly.
And how
exactly. Yeah, for that Digna, right now I'm just considering, I'm controlling it over here only.
Okay.
I'll be controlling like using request matcher only. I'm just giving access to the view page. That's it. This doesn't matter. Like all the CSS pages, all the JS pages, or all the HTML pages or the JSP pages are allowed. But the endpoint I can configure. I'll be protecting them using, like, another request matcher over here. Request matcher, let's say /hello is authenticated or protected. I will be just doing it authenticated or protected right over here. That I have to do it manually like this. Okay. For now it is just the view access. So everything in the view folder is right now accessible. Yeah.
Okay. And one more thing is, can you go to in memory load user?
Load users. One second. Control Shift T, in memory, and Control O, load users. Yes.
Why we are creating new user and return? We can return the same user, no? Is there any reason?
So here, as I have told you, Digna, for your user, like in your user details, right? So for the user details, there are two implementation, right? One is user and one is called mutable user. So, you are telling why you are returning a new user?
Yes.
That is a different requirement. Digna, we'll be talking about that in detail. Because, right, one second, if over here, mutable user, everywhere you'll be seeing, like, they will be creating a mutable user. Mutable user means, Digna, just think, okay, one second. Load users by username, this one. Well, this particular line, Digna, this particular user will be used again by the framework with the underlying code. What code will be using this returned user? Once you're going to be seeing it, you're going to be understanding it, like, why they have done it in this way. Okay, because I will be coming back to that with lot more detailed explanation on this, Digna. Okay, don't worry about it, because in the next few classes we'll be overriding this method and giving our own implementation as well. Okay, so don't worry about it. We will see that. But mutable user we are creating because we want to, let's say, edit the password of the user, or you want to do any kind of operation with the user. That's why they have another implementation for the same user details called mutable users. Okay. Any other questions, guys, from your end? Okay, this much of things made sense, or this is not making sense? Guys, can you confirm me? Whatever we did, that made sense, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sekar, thanks. So you should be a little bit okay with the MVC stuff. Otherwise, this will not make sense. And same thing we'll be doing time leaf as well. Code will be same for Angular as well. Time leaf as well. Here we have just used JSP. Okay, guys, if you are confident with this, I will be also confident on you, and I'll be continuing further. Maybe tomorrow, one more day, we'll be using JSP. Then we'll be, once we jump to Spring Boot, maybe next week or maybe this weekend, we can continue with time leaf, and I'll be telling you how to do the same thing with time leaf as well. But yeah, this is just the simple concept. Understand it. The basics will be clear. Once that is done, maybe a lot of advanced stuff we'll be discussing. All right.
In case of Spring Boot, we don't need to write those beans, right? Which we have declared in that.
No, the security config beans we will be needing. If you will not be defining that, Spring Boot will do some auto configuration and will create you some default user, and by default it will protect all the endpoints, right? But let's say if you want to customize just the way I have customized it right over here, you have to create the bean. But the bean that I have created in my app config, Vijay, let's say internal resource view resolver, you don't have to create this bean, right? Or let's say I have created some other bean to secure your Spring MVC stuff.
Password
and a password encoder also you have to create if you want to use some different password encoder. This handler mapping interceptor you don't need to create. That's why even I have not explained it. So we will see the Spring Boot auto configuration, Vijay, in a day or two. Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. All right then, guys. Any other questions? Repti, Avilas, I'm unable to create a bean for authentication manager. I'm stuck. I have to go. Repti, it's 9:02 already. But can you just get me the screenshot? We'll connect otherwise in the evening after the Kafka session. Okay? Yeah. So authentication manager bean is not able to create. Like the bean only is not getting created. Repti?
Yes, Avlash. I'm unable to create.
Like, what is the error message, Repti?
I mean, because of the authentication manager, I'm unable to create the custom filter object.
Oh, is it
because
so?
it has dependency on authentication. I'm creating a custom authentication filter. So I'm generating a username password token and I'm giving it to authentication manager, right?
Oh, okay.
So I'm giving it to authentication manager, and for that I'm unable to create the authentication manager bean.
Got it. Maybe some simple configuration stuff. Rati, we'll see if I have some time after the Kafka session today. We'll be seeing about that. Okay. Maybe we'll sit for 5 minutes and it'll be done.
Sure. Thank you.
Sure, guys. See you guys tomorrow, same time. Do practice. I'll get you the code by 1 p.m. today. All right. See you guys. Bye-bye.